Hello and welcome to The Big Fight, coming to you from the National Stock Exchange in Mumbai, and that's because it's that time of the year. This is the one program that you need to watch, otherwise it could be injurious to your wealth. Because yes, this is that episode of The Big Fight where we get the top experts on the field and we try and ask them, where should you be investing your money for the next 1 year? Let me just introduce the panel. Niranjan Hiranandani joins us, Managing Director of the Hiranandani Group. I think he was there with us last year as well, yes. As was Ramdev Agarwal, the Joint Managing Director of Motilal Oswal Financial Services. His mutual funds have been doing really well for the last year. So, I mean, look, you're going to have to give us more than just saying, put it into my fund. Okay, Ramdev, so you're going to have to give us more details than that. So, fine, we'll come to you to get some more details as we go forward. Suresh Sadgopan is a certified financial planner who will tell you exactly how to plan your investments. No doubt the words asset allocation will come into this as they often do. Sanjeev Agarwal is the CEO of Gitanjali Exports Corporation Limited, who has a very strong view, I'm sure, and lots of details on that much prized asset for all Indians, which is gold. Marriage season here, Diwali season here, a lot of people are just buying gold. Is that the right thing to do or no? We'll find out. And finally, it's great to have with us Ghulam Zia, who's Executive Director, Knight Frank, but real estate in particular, but also your take on everything, stock markets, mutual funds, commodities. Tell us if there's something radical you want us to buy in some metal somewhere, zinc or something. Tell us. No, we'll take your advice. All right, thank you all so much for being with us. One word perhaps to start off with, or one phrase to start off with, to just set the stage. In the next 1 year, 2015, 2016, which asset class is going to do the best? Which asset class should you be investing in? You first, then I'm going to come to others. One phrase, then I'll ask you to explain more.
Anybody who does not buy a residential real estate will miss the bus in perpetuity. I think this is the year for the residential real estate. It's down in the dumps. It's going up and up now. The demand is picking up. And the people who invest in it today are the persons who are going to be the biggest gainers in the next 5 years.
Ramdev Agarwal, you also have a theory on people missing the bus if they don't act fast.
Yeah, so with the falling interest rate and economy just about to take off, one has to invest in equities, if not 100% of the net worth or savings, at least 50-60% of their savings must go into equities, because in the last 30 years, markets have gone up 100x. The smart guys have done 1000x, but at least market has gone up by 100x. I think you have to start buying in not only next 1 year, but from tomorrow itself. You have to start building your equity portfolio for much longer prosperity.
Okay, long-term returns is what you're saying. People need to keep an eye on. 100x the Sensex has risen and the Nifty have risen in these years. All right, good point. Suresh.
Yeah, you specifically asked me about next 1 year. So if I'm going to restrict myself to the next 1 year, I would say debt products as such give the best bang for the buck at this moment. I completely agree with Mr. Agarwal that in the long term, equities are definitely an asset class to look at. But I think with the falling interest rate scenario upon us, I think debt mutual funds or debt products in general, I think are a good bet for people. There is no very less.
The next 1 year, you are saying debt is going to outperform equity. Just on that point, Ramdev, what you said is a long-term thing. In the next 1 year, do you still think equity will outperform debt mutual funds?
Very difficult to say in equities. That last year also we might have said that it will do 15-20%, because long-term averages are 17%. But it is very difficult to predict what happens in next 1 year. It could be 80-90% return also, if things work out. But it may be 5-10% below. So what I would say is, on a say 3 to 5 year scale, your downside is 10%, your upside is at least 100%.
Okay. Gold has to be part of your overall savings and part of the savings that goes into various financial assets.
Do Indians overdo it on gold a little bit? A lot of people say that. You know how much of the world's stock of gold is actually in India? It's a very large amount. So
yeah, but the fact of the matter is that gold that they hold have helped them in inflation protection over the last many years, over the last 20, 30, 40 years. That's the only asset which has given them that protection and continuity in protection without that volatility. So that's where it stands.
Okay, even in the next 1 year, you think gold?
It's going to be positive. Will it give that incremental steep returns? Maybe not. but it'll give reasonable returns going forward.
All right. So here we have it, Ghulam. Real estate, stocks, debt and debt mutual funds, gold. You have the tie-breaking vote as of this moment.
I would go for mutual funds, SIPs. But those who are brave hearts, I would say jump into equity straight away. Because that's something, to me, it's making more sense today, much more than even real estate.
So more than real estate, and having said that you're a bit Knight Frank, so you probably spend a lot of your time advising on real estate, you would still go for equity. When you say mutual funds, you mean equity mutual funds or debt mutual funds?
I would go with equity.
So your overall vote would be equity,
That's right.
not real estate.
Not real estate.
So let's dive into each of these. Why not real estate? Let's start the debate on that.
As you said, perhaps I know a bit more than what most of the people know about real estate, hence not real estate. Well, we know that
Actually, a rather worrying thing for the rest of us. So you know so much about it that you're saying no real estate for that reason.
absolutely, because it's a bit too on a shaky ground right now. I understand we're talking about housing for all, we're talking about, make in India, which will have a large impact on overall economy and hence on real estate. But next year and a half or so, I don't see many of these indicators changing. And that's a very risky thing for me to walk into right now, and especially because the prices haven't actually started coming down. And if I enter at that peak price point, then for me to make money on that is going to be a Herculean task, not real estate.
So you're saying real estate prices are already high and have not come down too much,
That's right.
and you don't see too much return going forward, not the way it has been for the last 15-20 years.
Yes.
All right, Niranjan, radically different views.
No, this is a luxury of a person who already has housing availability to him. But take the people in the audience and ask them, do you want to buy a house in the next few years? The answer is yes. And those people who want to buy a house, better buy it now, then wait for the prices to move up in the next 1 year and then get into the market. So buying a house is always recommended when the market is low, which is where it is
Is
today.
the market low? Because if you look at real estate prices in India and compare them to the per capita income, a lot of people will say India is off the scale. The number of years salary you actually have to spend to buy a house. I mean, Mumbai, of course, is probably crazy, but even elsewhere.
I've heard this for 25, 30 years.
You're right.
What
This
I do
theory
is
has been there for 25 years and prices have kept going up.
It's okay to talk about it. If today you're looking at a 1 year scenario, everything looks hunky-dory. If you're talking about making your social security in your life and being able to buy it, the benefits given in terms of interest subvention, interest rate reduction, buying a house in terms of the benefits given by the banks and financial institutions today, Reserve Bank of India allowing you 90% loan, 20-year scenario.
Expecting a lot more concession than this. Some people feel that one of the things the government can do to get the economy moving is more on housing. So maybe in the budget and other things, a lot more rebates coming up, encouraging people to spend more money on housing. You see that happening or no?
See, from a real estate developer perspective, I don't mind if people take places on rent from me and wait to buy out the house and buy it at a higher price tomorrow. So that's okay from my developer perspective. But from a person who wants to be and buy a house for himself, please go out and buy it.
Okay.
Don't wait for tomorrow.
Ghulam,
Tomorrow
if you don't have a house, should you be trying to buy one right now?
Not really, because that 2 to 2.5% of rental yield that I get today, I would rather very comfortably stay in a rented apartment. I agree that it's ultimately a demand supply situation, but not buy definitely. I would rather rent it.
Yeah, actually, let me come to that, and I'm going to come to all of you. The fact is, let me just...
That's a luxury statement of a person who already owns a house. But
No, you
when
said
you
that before, but-
don't own a house, please, for God's sake, buy it today.
No, hang on. Let me try and mediate this particular fight. His theory, and I'd like to see an economic rationale to this theory, is if you're right now, the rent that you can buy a house, let's say for 1 lakh rupees, or Mumbai, what am I saying? 1 crore rupees, you probably, the interest the rent that you are paying is 1% or 2% return. You're better off putting that money into a bank and getting the interest, or putting it into equity, or putting it into a debt mutual fund. A tax-free bond, by the way, will give you 7% tax-free. With the return you get on that, pay your rent, you're still 4-5% up.
No, not at all. I wouldn't do that. If I was a person who didn't have a house, I would go in it, take a 20-year loan, a EMI, reduced rate
At
of interest.
8%.
At the rent at which you are doing it, you will get your house.
Okay, economic, Ramdev, let's just get all of you in on the real estate question. What makes more sense? Rent, he says, buy, he says.
Yeah, particularly in Mumbai context, where things are 50,000, a lakh rupees per square foot kind of situation. And today's rental yield of 1.5–2%. I would say, particularly the young guys, those who are making their career at 25–30, my analysts and the fund managers and all, I would expect that they would put their monies, life savings money, in the mutual fund kind of product, equity mutual fund product, where he can get anywhere between 15–20%, and he can comfortably stay in 1,000 square feet at whatever 2%, 3% yield on the same asset, and 5 years, 7 years out, because every asset has a life cycle. There is a time for the asset. In 95, 96, what was say 30–40,000, it came down to 7–8,000 in 2002–3. People forget. I mean, Mr. Hiranandani is the best person to tell you in last 20 years what kind of asset cycle we have seen. From a high of 35–40,000 in Nariman Point to as low as 7–8,000 rupees in the same Nariman Point. And from there again to 45,000, and now again.
But he said you won't get those prices. If you got to buy a house, buy it now. Although other cities, I mean, like, look, it's not just Mumbai. Hyderabad, places like that, prices have been going down in a secular manner.
And still you don't want to buy.
Okay, we're trying to decide what the right thing is. I'm going to turn to the audience and see which way they are convinced.
Let us look at this audience. They are all very young people here. So a lot of these people today they are in Mumbai. Tomorrow they may be in Hyderabad. Later on, 5 years down the line, they may be in Bangalore. Do you really want to drop anchor at this point in time and buy a house in Mumbai? So I'm asking a very broad question.
Look, this program thing watched all around the country. So forget Mumbai. In general, his theory is if you don't own a house, buy one now. You may not be able to afford it later. His theory is don't worry about it if you don't have a house. You can always rent it. The rental is only 2% or 1% of the capital cost. You're better off putting your money into anything, tax-free bond or something, and rent it. Rent or buy, what would you say?
I would say rent. For a lot of people,
rent?
Yeah, I would say rent, because for a lot of people who are very young, they are going to be really mobile.
Okay.
So renting is a much better option.
Well, my first-hand experience is that, let's break this up into two. Are you talking as an investment or for living in it? If it's living in it, it's a no-brainer. You have to buy a house. You buy it today rather than any time later. I've gone through this whole process of analyzing yields and returns and so on, and got caught in the matrix of numbers where in 1980s a flat in Cuffpet was costing 1 crore rupees, and I said I'm better off renting it out. Today I won't get it for 4.5, 5 crores, and it's out of my range.
Ramdev would have his own theories on the fact that at that time you could have been buying a share of Infosys at what price.
That's exactly what I did.
You could have been buying.
I exactly did that. I bought stocks. I bought stocks, and my stocks did not give that equal amount of returns as the property has appreciated.
All right, we'll discuss which stocks you bought. Maybe they weren't the right ones, because actually, in the index you would have probably.
Yeah, so as a former banker, I performed the same analysis, and I realized that if you have to buy a house for yourself, the only first house, you might as well buy it any time, because over a 30 years period, it does not matter.
Okay. Do you agree with that particular theory? So that if you're buying it for your own personal use and you need to live in it, then you might still buy the house now.
For some reasons, buying a house has become perhaps next to nationalism in this country. I am a nationalist, so I have to buy a house. It's not in India alone. All over the world, people don't care so much about owning a particular house. You can always rent it. But here in India, the psyche is very, very different. We want to own a house. I would want to challenge it. If for your life, if you can stay in a rented apartment, why not? Think about it. As somebody said, mobility. Tomorrow I get a job in Delhi, but that damn house which I bought in Bombay will hold me in Mumbai, and then my career growth aspiration could actually go for a toss.
Niranjan.
There is no social security in India which works beyond a house.
Gold. He's about to say gold.
Absolutely no. There is no social security in this country today beyond a house. Whether you're mobile, immobile, or whatsoever, you're young, you're old, you're healthy, unhealthy, please buy a house. If you can't afford a big house, buy it in Hyderabad, a small house.
How is it social security? What happens when your daughter-in-law or son-in-law throw you out of that when you're 75, 80? Then, okay, that's a separate big fight maybe. So, but
Absolutely. We won't get into that, I hope, in this meeting.
All right. But let me turn to the audience. How many of you, first of all, completely unscientific snap polling, how many of you think that real estate is the best investment? Okay, you know, audiences are starting to change in India. Why do you think so?
The smart city is coming up and the land getting opened up in the future if the legislation gets passed. Don't you think it will be prudent for an investor to invest in a tier 2 or a tier 3 city and stay in rent in a place like Mumbai? So what happens is he gets to own an asset and he is also saving on the cost.
Okay, so you're saying real estate is good, but pick where you are investing in real estate. Yeah, you had a view?
So a house is a house. It always increases its value. It never decreases value. I've never seen a value get decreased. And when we buy a house, we can get rent. Even if we don't live in it, we can get rent.
But you know what rental return you're going to get? You're getting 2% rental return.
Yes, sir.
It's almost like putting your money in a Swiss bank, which is somewhat similar to that. So that's the issue. Your rental return is not very high, unless commercial, which is something else perhaps.
My point, small point would be that it's not about what you can invest in real estate today. It's very difficult to get out of it if you were taking it as an investment. I would say, I would go with stocks and equity, and I would say the most important point would be what is the asset class division that you would do.
Okay, that's something which I can tell you Suresh has been waiting for someone to talk about. He can't wait to start talking about asset allocation. But before he starts talking about asset allocation, he used the L word, which is a really important word, which is liquidity. And that is perhaps one of the issues around real estate, that you said it's a question of security. Yes, but if tomorrow you really need to sell, that's where you have a problem, and that's one of the big disadvantages of real estate. It's big, it's lumpy. Can you sell your house if you really need the cash? If you got equity or you got a mutual fund, no problem. Even gold, sell it tomorrow. You can't necessarily do that with property. Downside?
Of course, there is a downside to everything that you do, but people who bought houses in Powai 20 years ago for 1,000 rupees are reselling it at 30,000 rupees today. Show me a position which would be equivalent and probably the finest houses in the world. So I don't agree with you at all when you say that don't buy a house.
Devil's advocate, I'm not telling you what to buy one way or the other. It's your job to argue. It's my job to instigate you all.
I am not here correctly to advise people in this country to say don't look at. Yes, I agree with the point that you may not invest it in Mumbai if you don't have that portfolio, but don't not invest in it, because that's dangerous advice to be given to anybody.
Okay, so if you can, you should invest in. The liquidity question, is that something which comes?
It's a huge concern. It's a huge concern because the more exclusive a property, lesser the number of probable buyers when you want to exit. And that gives you that much more pain when you want to sell. And that's a big difference between stocks and real estate. Selling a house is always a pain, and it's not something which can be done overnight. Even if I have a good market available, there are hundreds of people, and especially that happens in Mumbai. And I would give that to Mr. Hirandani, because he is in Mumbai. Selling a house, a ready house in Mumbai is not that much of a pain. But rest of the country, I can tell you, it's a Herculean task.
Okay, let's turn to the second asset class that we were talking about, which is equity. Equity around the world has been seen as, over a long period of time, India real estate has given absolutely phenomenal returns. Around the world, equity is normally seen at that level. In India, a lot of retail investors in particular have actually burnt their fingers, which perhaps had led people to believe that equity is it's gambling, sattabazi, it's one step away from betting on IPL matches or the equivalent. How should people be investing in equity?
One of the issues with the equity is it is not a hard asset. When you buy real estate or gold, you get hard assets, you can touch and feel and kind of possess it. But what it does, because with the hard assets, your downside is limited, and hence technically upside is also limited. Whereas in equities, you are investing in businesses. Your small sliver of businesses, 100 shares of Reliance, 100 shares of Telco, 100 shares of Infosys, 100 shares of Sun Pharma. So what you are buying is, though you are not in those businesses, but you have an opportunity to buy those small pieces of businesses and make a nice portfolio of those businesses. So,
But that's assuming that people are buying equity with that frame of mind.
Yes.
Because that's not what often happens. A lot of people are buying equity and hoping to make money by saying, आज मैं 100 में खरीद रहा हूँ, कल मैं 105 में बेच दूंगा. That's when you can, and even worse, some of them borrow money to do it.
Yeah,
in which case, then that's dangerous.
yeah, so that's the biggest problem of equities. In equities, you can invest and you can speculate. People who are looking for price change, even in a year's time, they are speculators, and they can borrow and whatever. I mean, experience is very bad. Whereas when you invest in businesses for the performance of the business, and not only for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year, but 10, 15, 20 years, I mean, then that is investing. And that's where serious money has been made. Let me just put on record, Infosys, which is the mother of all the growth stories probably in the world, between 93 and today, they have grown by more than 6,000 times. In 20 years, 6,000 times, excluding dividend. With dividend, it is maybe 10,000 times. So, and they have, of course, Infosys is one story, but there are stories after stories, whether it is a Lupin, whether it is a Hero Honda, whether it is Bharti, whole lot of these companies. So, I mean, you need to be lucky to get one in your portfolio.
All right. Before I come to the rest of them, on the question of equity, yes, you were talking about it's dangerous sometimes. You know what can happen. Equity, what is your take on that?
I think it's a very good thing to maintain some liquidity in the thing, but after you have bought your house, because if you don't really, and second, you can afford to take debt, long-term debt on a house where you have the interest deduction, you have an income tax deduction, and it's possible for you to get all those benefits for purpose of getting a house. God forbid, I would certainly not leverage on investment in equity. So that is dangerous.
That's a dangerous thing to do.
So I wouldn't mind betting a couple of crores of rupees and buying a house and taking debt on it on a 20-year scenario, but catch me taking a not huge debt on equity.
Equity you should never leverage. Never leverage equity.
Never leverage equity.
Because equity itself is a risk asset class. You know, and it has its own power.
So that's one rule that both of you are agreeing on. Don't borrow money to buy stocks.
But I would put some percentage in shares also, but after I've taken the house.
After you okay, now can I come to you, sir, and let's get the asset allocation question out of the way. Because the question of equity and the question of debt also to some extent depends on who the person is, how old the person is, what that person's projected earning capacity is. If you're 21-year-old or 22 years old, just getting your first salary, you may well be able to put a lot of money into equity and take that risk. If you're 65 or 70 about to retire, maybe you shouldn't have 80% of your money in equity.
Correct. So, I mean, it currently looks like a slanging match between various asset classes. But actually speaking, all asset classes have a place in somebody's portfolio. Like you rightly pointed out, a person who is 25 and a person who is 65, they will have different portfolios and different asset allocations. For a person who is young, maybe 25, 30, probably they should have an allocation in debt to start with. I mean, I'm giving a slightly contrarian view, because when you start off in life, normally what happens is you have lot of small to medium level goals coming up, and some of the goals are also even big, like somebody wants to buy a property. So you have to have a certain level of debt, because you may want to go on a vacation, you may want to spend on your sister, you may want to spend on your brother. You may want to
You're not talking about borrowing money, you're talking about investing it in debt mutual funds or tax-free bonds or the equivalent.
Having said that, I'm not saying that you should put all your money in debt. The bedrock of investment to start with, I mean, to take care of whatever goals are coming up, should be in debt, and after that I think one should look at equity in a very serious way, because in the long term that is one asset class which has given amazing return. I mean, I entirely concur with Mr. Agarwal.
All right, let me get you and Sanjeev. Once you bought your gold, should you be putting the bulk of the rest of your money into equity over a long-term period? Depending on your age.
Yeah. First, what amount in gold? As per the asset allocation model and a lot of research done by the World Gold Council on what is the appropriate amount of financial assets in gold, they've come out with a figure which is a 10 to 15% in gold kept every year of the entire asset allocation. Reduce
15%, that sounds high. I've heard more, 5 to 10%.
It varies from period to period of movement of the gold prices and other asset class, but it is around 10% plus minus. At that level, you are reducing your volatility of the entire portfolio without affecting returns. In the Indian context, it improves, and that's why I said the 10-15% is because of the rupee depreciation over and above the return on the various asset class vis-a-vis the international market.
I'm going to come back to gold actually in a couple of minutes, but I just want to get your take on equity first.
Yeah, having said that, as far as equity is concerned, depending on the age bracket, it should be minimum 40 to 60% of the portfolio in equities. You can borrow to invest in your property, get a tax break on your investment, because at the young age and middle age, you can borrow significant amounts of money against your future income. So you can borrow. So when I'm looking at the portfolio and developing a portfolio, it should be equities 40 to 60%, because across all asset classes from a return perspective, equity is going to be the highest, but higher risk. You have to take that into account.
40 to 60% in equity. What would be your take?
I would do 35 to 40% in equity for sure.
So no property, 35 to 40% in equity. Where are you putting the rest of the money?
Lots of other things are there. I would rather
The mattress.
possibility, yes. Well,
Cash under your mattress.
on a lighter note, other asset classes are also there. I would also obviously invest in gold and approach that we're talking about every year, spending something every Diwali, buying some gold. These are obviously things which go a long way. But equity more than that. I would then also, well, personally not debt, but then debt is also something which many of the people have actually been investing big times.
Okay, but you're saying you should put 35 to 40% into equity.
Yes.
In any rate. Within equity, Ramdev, now this is one of the things that people are saying, where are we in this cycle? Because India is obviously looking encouraging. I mean, अच्छे दिन aren't here just yet, but सबकी उम्मीद है कि they are around the corner, they'll be coming soon, all these plans will start rolling out. But having said that, internationally the situation is not that bright. And if you look at the history of the last 15 to 20 years, India has actually got a greater synergy with what happens around the world, and especially with emerging markets, than many people actually believe. You would think that India is isolated, but it is not. When the world sinks, India sinks. When the world rises, India rises. Emerging markets in particular. So is India, do you see the rest of the world is in a fine enough shape for people to really take a big bet in equity?
Yeah. Now here we have to, at this juncture, we have to clearly understand that India is part of the global community. So we will move in sync with whatever happens in the world economy. But investing in Indian stock market, or for that matter any stock market, the stocks are different from markets. You don't buy markets, you buy stocks. So you have to find a manager, because there are 5,000 stocks. And even in Nifty, where 50 stocks are there are 25 stocks which are doing very well, and there are 25 stocks which are doing very badly. The combination is looking as if the whole market is static. So you need a manager who can cull out the bad ones away from your portfolio and put majority of good stocks in your portfolio. And there are portfolio managers who have done very well in last 1 year, 2 year, 3 year when markets are not moved. So I say like
Right. So you're saying instead of going into direct equity yourself, find a mutual fund manager and put it. Would you agree with that? For a retail investor, go the mutual fund route, it's safer. And perhaps systematic investment planning, which just in case you haven't heard of it yet, this is the one piece of advice that you will thank having watched this episode of The Big Fight for, hopefully for the rest of your life. One of the best things you can do for your own finances is systematic investment planning. Put a certain amount of money away every single month in an equity mutual fund, and inshallah it will do well for you.
100%. I would have huge respect for SIP, especially the mutual funds. Now, whether it's your pick, you want to do debt or equity, but then SIP is something which goes a long way. The experts obviously have some different views on that, but at least to me, I haven't seen anything going wrong with SIP investments.
So SIP, so would you agree with that, especially for retail investors, systematic investment planning, a certain amount every month into a mutual fund or two is the safest way to make money?
Equity is one of the best ways, and managed funds are one of the best ways of investing in mutual funds, because the Indian experience is that the managed funds, the funds which are managed by certain fund managers, actively managed funds, they are doing very well. That is an exception to the world law, where index funds are doing very well. So in Indian context, managed funds have been doing exceptionally well. And coming to the point that he made, for the retail investor, we are getting money on a monthly basis. End of the month you get a salary. So on a monthly basis you have certain amount to put aside. So the beauty of SIP is that you are not timing the market. We are all we all get emotionally
emotion out of it. Otherwise what tends to happen, especially with retail investors, when the markets are crashing, you say, oh my God, and you sell. The markets are rising and have risen, you say, okay, let's buy, which is the opposite of what you should be doing.
Absolutely.
You should be buying when the market has crashed and selling when the market has risen. But psychologically, some people find that difficult, which is why you do systematic planning.
Most of the people are not able to buy when it is down, and most of the people end up selling when it is down.
See, fundamentally there are two types of risk in the market when you come to equity markets. One is the manager risk and second is the market risk. By doing SIP, you have killed the market risk because you are diversified. I mean, you are buying little for 30 months, 40 months, 50 months, 100 months. So market, you get average of all these 50 months. So market is no more fear for you. Second is you might give money to me and I may not be able to perform up to the expectation. So you diversify the managers also. You have, instead of one, you have two or three depending on the amount of money. So once you have 2-3 managers, good managers and SIP running, I think you are literally taken care of. You get best of both the worlds.
Alright. Sound strategy to your mind?
Absolutely sound, where you need a portfolio of managers, not just one. Very clearly, as Ramdev said, is the right strategy.
And then don't time the market, do it systematically.
Don't time the market, and if you're smart, then whenever the market goes down and you're able to put in a little bit extra.
Alright, let me turn to the audience once again. Unscientific snap polling. How many of you think that equity is the best investment? Okay, it's still a minority. I'm trying to figure out what the rest of you think is a great investment. So 5 people felt equity. Why do you think equity is great?
I think equity is great because the track record of the last 20-30 years just of the Sensex, as Mr. Agarwal pointed out, it's 100 times, in 20 years. So the only thing that it requires is patience, and you can invest in small amounts and you have liquidity.
Okay.
So
liquidity is a big point. Yeah, the gentleman there.
Imagine, as he said, imagine buying a house 20 years earlier and what is the appreciation you get. Imagine buying some shares of Infosys or Reliance. Reliance has been known to be doing, generations getting their daughters married through the shares of Reliance. So imagine
although the last 7-8 years, Reliance stocks haven't done that much, but then I guess it's a question of timing. All right, can I come back to all of you with one other idea? And this one I have to say, last year, same program that we were doing, and I made a suggestion to many of you who were here and to the others of what I thought the best investment was, and I have to say, it was a reasonably good call. I still feel it's not bad. Tax-free bonds. Now last year you were getting 8.5% tax-free, backed by the government of India, which was effectively 11-12% return, and then you got capital appreciation as interest rates go down. Which of you think that is, even today, now it's down, it's now 7% only returns, not 8.5%. How many of you think that that's still a very good investment?
You don't go 100% in equities. You have to have balance of portfolios. Okay. So if you go say 50% equities or 65% equities, depending on your appetite, the balance has to be put in a very judicious way into high-yielding bonds. So I think tax-free bond would definitely score there. And 7.5, 7.25, that's a good one.
I think a person who crosses 60-65, which is what I've reached, I think tax-free bonds would be very interesting to do. But maybe if I was young and I wanted to be more risky, I would certainly go in for equities more than tax-free bonds. Tax-free bond doesn't excite me as much when I'm younger, but when I'm reasonably my age, I would go into tax-free bonds.
Actually, last year it was 8.5% tax-free returns, and I couldn't believe that people weren't putting all their money into it.
At about 45-50, should I go for tax-free or should I look at more equity thing? I would rather stay away from both.
Away from equity and tax-free bonds?
Away from tax-free bond for sure. I would still take my bet on more of equity.
Okay, but you only got 35%, you're not buying real estate. What are you doing with the remaining 55? You're still refusing to tell us.
Well,
you're like the audience, all of you have got some secret investment which the rest of us can't figure out.
Vikram, one more thought.
I'm just trying to figure this out. No gold, no...
I spoke about gold. I did speak about
Okay, 10% gold. Okay, I'll get all of your asset allocations at the end of this, show.
Yeah. Tax-free bonds, I would say that it doesn't make too much of a sense unless you're on the 30% bracket. Only then it makes a lot of sense. You have to take into account that you're locking for 15 years or longer.
But you're getting that sort of return for 15 years.
You want to enjoy it now or you want to enjoy it 15 years later?
But you're getting the money every year.
Yeah, but you can get the same in a normal debenture or a bank deposit.
But the normal debenture is only there for 2, 3 years, 4 years. Then if interest rates fall, what are you going to do?
Yeah, you don't know when the inflation moves. It may also rise again. We are estimating it will fall, which is 70% likely, but there is 30%.
Your take?
I say that tax-free bonds are a very good investment, especially like Mr. Hiranandani said, for a person who is probably near retirement or into retirement. It's a wonderful instrument to invest in because that gives you consistent income over a long foreseeable future. And the most important problem today that retirees are facing is that inflation has eaten into their corpus, and they literally have to come down as far as their quality of living is concerned. So
if you are concerned about inflation, although inflation is coming down, that's what brings in gold. So let's just turn to the gold question. Actually, to my mind, the basic thesis on gold should be based on something else. If you look at what's happening around the world, the way country after country is printing paper currency as if there is no tomorrow. Every country is doing it. The US has been doing it, Europe is doing it, Japan is doing it. I think India is probably better off than some of these countries.
Sure.
I'm not surprised if a day is not going to come when people are going to start losing, not faith, but starting to wonder just what is happening. How much paper currency are people printing? And historically, that's the time when gold or silver really come into their own. So is that, do you think, one of the big arguments for buying gold, and perhaps even more so silver, because silver's got other issues. Silver is actually a valuable asset that you can use for industrial purposes also.
No, definitely over the last 9 years, the reason why the gold prices have gone up is because the investment demand has gone up. The jewelry demand has remained more or less stagnant globally, but the investment demand has gone up, which has increased the price. Over and above that, apart from individuals, even the reserve banks of various countries have been buying gold. Traditionally, the reserve banks used to sell 500 tons of gold every year into the market, creating that much more of liquidity of supply of gold. For the last 6 years, they've been buying 500 tons plus or minus every year, either Russia or China or Kazakhstan, you just name any country, they've been buying gold as part of incremental reserve assets. That's number one. Number two is the fact that again in terms of reserve assets, China has less than 1% reserve in the form of gold, whereas the developed countries like the US, Italy, France, Spain and all these other, Germany have 50% plus in gold. So with their aspirations to be 50% of the reserves in gold.
Some countries, not all of them.
Okay,
foreign, you're talking about foreign assets.
US, Germany, all the developed countries like US, Germany, France, Italy, Spain, they have 50% plus in gold.
Alright, so argument for gold, who disagrees with buying gold? Ramdev, I know you have a very low opinion of gold.
See, gold in any case you get in marriages, you know, and for jewelry purposes, and I mean there is a tradition in India for family to have gold. So I think that part I'm not considering as investment. So that's a part of the family jewel or whatever you can say.
But to buy gold is an investment. $1,100 gold is off a lot. Prices are down. Is it an attractive buy now or no?
Yeah. So as an investment, I would never. I consider it like a soil. You know, this is an asset class which doesn't generate anything. At least reality gives you comfort of living.
You're saying gold is like soil for you.
It's absolutely worse than soil.
I think there's something in the Bhagavad Gita about that also, eventually reaching a stage where you equate gold with soil, but okay.
Gold, no, gold of course you should have a little percentage of it, enough to satisfy your wife. I think beyond that there's no necessity to do beyond that, and that can be a hell of a lot, so I mean it's okay. But what I wanted to say is there are innovative instruments coming in the next 1 year affiliated to real estate, like the Real Estate Investment Trust, which will give you continuous good returns and at the same time security and appreciation over a period of time. The last budget did not do enough in terms of completing that transaction. I think in the next...
You're talking about a hybrid which is financial instrument and yet real estate linked.
Exactly. So you have the liquidity which you talked about, and at the same time, because there's an issue of stamp duty.
These are new innovative instruments that might be coming out.
So that should be out after the next budget, and I think a lot of investments will take place into that segment, which will give you secured returns with capital appreciation.
Fair enough. Your take on gold?
A lot of people, so there are two things. One is consumption and one is investment. So consumption is anyway happening in the country. A lot of people swear by gold, they want jewelry, so that's anyway happening. As far as bullion buying is concerned, I entirely concur with what Mr. Agarwal had said, that having certain amount of allocation in the portfolio actually brings down the portfolio risk. So to that extent, certain amount of allocation we will have to give gold. So whether it is 5% or 10%, we don't know.
Let me turn back to the audience, and remember, most of you haven't yet raised your hand as to what you think is a very good investment. Gold, how many of you would pick gold? One lady out there. All right, fine. Nobody else raising their hands. Tax-free bonds? Nobody. So the rest of this audience doesn't believe in investment in general. That's what I'm going to take. I'm going to take that as the learning from the first segment, because we haven't yet found something that really satisfies this audience in what to buy. All right, I'm going to take a break at that point, and then when we come back, I'm going to try and get the panel to suggest an asset allocation for us. And that's another big buzzword. If you have 100 rupees to invest, where should you be investing it? So I'm giving you all 3 minutes to think about your preferred asset allocation, and we'll be back just after that. Welcome back to The Big Fight. This is one of those shows which I certainly hope you've been watching if you want your finances to be well looked after. Well, let me turn back now to the audience and quickly see if anybody else has a view on where to invest your money. Yeah, the gentleman down there.
Well, it's very important what percentage we're talking about. One thing I'd like to say in favor of Mr. Hiranandani is that whether it's real estate or gold, see, we must remember one thing, that if it's equity, it definitely gives you better return. It may give you better returns, but it could be a downside. If you don't have a good manager, you can lose everything. But that doesn't happen in gold, it doesn't happen in real estate. I mean, if something goes wrong...
The downside risk you're saying in equity, which is there. All right, the gentleman there, last comment.
One quick point on gold I would like to make. Gold was traditionally hoarded in India for marriages, but now with the social economic change happening, you don't need to really, store gold to give off your daughters. So I think over a longer period, gold will probably come down.
Yeah.
Sons, yes.
Or your sons, yeah, your daughters are going to be coming after you. All right, fine. Let me come back now to all of you. Preferred asset allocation. Why don't I start with you? And let's, for the sake of argument, assume you have bought your house. Now, what asset allocation do you think people should say?
I think I would put in 1/3 into equities, 1/3 into debt, and 1/3 into buying a second house on installments and EMI, and borrow 400. So if I had 100, I would say 30 rupees for the EMI for the next house, that is investment, and borrow 4 times as much for the purposes of getting that as a thing. So you get an interest deduction of 100% now. Otherwise, it's limited to 2 lakhs of rupees. But if you do it as an investment for a rental house, you get 100% interest deduction on the rentals.
So your asset allocation, including that first house, comes to about 99% in real estate, if I calculate correctly.
Yeah, because that is the advantage of being able to leverage on buying houses.
Okay, fine. Ramdeo, asset allocation.
Yeah, so I would suggest 3 types of asset allocation. For a very conservative guy, 25% debt, for very conservative guys, 25%, 75% debt, 25% equity. For a very balanced guy who doesn't want to bother too much about the risk assessment, 50% equity, 50% debt. And for a very aggressive guy and very young guy who understands the power of equities and who has a good earnings power himself, he is not dependent on this particular saving in a very short term, he can go 75% equity, 25% debt.
All right, your asset allocation.
Yeah, so there are 2 things which we will have to see. One is, of course, the age of the person, the number of years to retirement. So that is one metric. The second metric is the risk tolerance level of the person. Just because a person is 25, that does not mean that the person is going to be hyper aggressive. The person may inherently be very conservative. So we have to take that into account when we actually put together a portfolio.
So you should factor that in, and then otherwise, if you are aggressive or in the ability to take risk, then would you agree with what Ramdeo said as a rough benchmark?
I would say, as far as the asset allocation is concerned, I would give broad. I'll give broad ranges, rather than saying that it should be 25 or 45 or whatever. So for a young person who is maybe 30 or maybe 35 and below, I would say something like probably 55 to 75% in equity will be appropriate, depending on how conservative or how aggressive they are. And the other asset classes could be debt, some amount of gold, and some amount of real estate. So I'm not taking real estate out of the equation. Real estate can be a part of the equation,
Because it's
But the
also a great
majority-
asset.
all right, we get the
Well, again, there is risk issues involved in it. The stage of life and savings that you've
Yeah,
collected.
let's
So
assume
taking
that,
that, if I put a range, equity should be about 40 to 60%. Fixed income or bonds or debt, as we're calling it, should be in the region of about 20%, 25%. Paying EMIs for housing should be about 20% or thereabouts, and gold could be anywhere between 10 to 20% depending on what the portfolio is all about. Higher equity, higher component of gold.
all right. Last word from you.
Well, 1/3 in equity for sure, and 1/3 to be divided between debt and gold depending upon how much is your appetite. But 1/3 I would punt on things like art, precious stones, and wines.
Wine. That's an interesting idea. Why don't we discuss this in greater depth? 1/3 of your money in wine and precious stones and art.
Precious stone, wines, and art.
All right, this I think calls for an entire episode of The Big Fight just by itself, and I shall love to come and inspect some of those collections that you might be recommending there. So range of options. Thank you all so much for joining us. That's really the view out here. By and large, the consensus, you have to have a mix. Don't think you should take all your money and put it into one category or the other. By and large, a good judicial mix, and you should be in fine shape one way or the other. Also depends on what your age is, what your stage in life is, and what immediate requirements you have coming up. That was it for this special episode of The Big Fight. We'll be back next week. Bye for now.